Preparing your student for testing and properly administering an achievement test are ingredients for success. Children can become anxious or feel pressured that the test is a pass-fail or some measurement of their worth, or a reflection on how successful a mom has been in teaching their own children at home. The annual achievement test is merely an attempt to measure what a child has mastered in the various areas where testing is administered. It is to be used as a tool over time to measure their progress, to identify weak areas, and to recognize the strengths and weakness of your student. It's important to talk with your children about testing. Encourage them to focus and to do their best, but not to be anxious or worry that these test results are a total sum of their worth as a student. You want to make sure that children receive enough rest and a good breakfast the morning of testing. Testing a student for the very first time is for the purpose of establishing a baseline to try to measure their mastery level in various areas. Then the ensuing tests over years to come will measure progress, growth, or areas of difficulty. When administering the annual achievement test, you want to make sure you've taken the time to read over the testing instructions for general information, as well as the specific instructions for the age group or grade range in which you will be administering the testing. You want to make sure that you're familiar with the testing booklet, the answer folder, the time frames, and that you are ready to administer the test in an encouraging yet decisive way. You want to remember that students are a little bit nervous, a little bit anxious about the tests, how well they'll do, and you want to make sure you encourage them to do their best while remaining focused. Many times homeschool students aren't familiar with time frames because we allow them to do their work in their time and to complete it maybe before the day is over, not within a specific 20 minutes or a half hour. But the tests do require time frames. The purpose of these time frames is to measure evenly across the board on how students do in order to come up with a standard. It doesn't mean that because a student takes more time that they're not as smart, or because a student is faster that they're brighter. Each child has their own different way of processing information. But it is important that the times for each testing section are held to. Otherwise it'll skew the scores and give you a reading different than where your child truly may be academically of those areas being tested. Proctors need to make sure that they carefully and clearly go over the directions and the samples, making certain that the students understand what they are to do during those times of testing. Proctors are not to give answers to any of the specific questions, but if a student does want a proctor to help them, the proctor simply needs to remember to rehearse the instructions. For instance, if Johnny says, "I'm not sure if this is the right answer," the proctor would say, "Well, remember, you're supposed to choose which answer is the most correct. If you think that answer is the most correct, then go ahead and mark that on your answer folder." Even if you know that they've picked the wrong answer, you must avoid correcting them or instructing them on the academic material being tested. This is to show what they know, not necessarily what they have been exposed to but might not remember at the moment. When testing younger children or students that are being tested for the first time, one needs to make certain that they are carefully reading the proper testing material and putting their answers in the proper place. Sometimes students are confused and they're overwhelmed with all the different aspects of testing, and they don't fill in the answers in the right section of the answer folder. This seems to specifically occur with younger children. So you want to make sure that they're filling in the answers in the right places. When families receive test results, there's usually one of three reactions. The student did better than the parent thought, the student did about how the parent thought, and then the student didn't do as well. Sometimes students know academic material but aren't good at taking tests. Sometimes students are a lot smarter than we as parents give them credit for. Or we might even think they're not doing as well as they really are. So it's important to realize that test results are an attempt at measuring what they have mastered. The results are to be used to determine areas that need a little more focus, areas that the students are weak in, and to use it as a baseline to track how a student progresses over the years ahead. If you have any questions about testing, make sure you've carefully looked over the instructions and the testing materials. Check with the administrator of your testing location or call our office for an explanation. We want to make sure that testing is a good experience for both you, the administrator, and for the student, so that we can get the best results possible in understanding what our children know. Prepare the materials for administering the test to your student. Turn on your computer or laptop. Take the CD out of the sleeve and insert it into the drive of your computer. Once you've closed the drive, the computer should automatically read the disk and open up a window with a folder in it. This folder contains the testing instrument. Once the window opens, double-click on the file in order to open the PDF file of your student's test. Make sure the testing instrument and the answer folder match so that your child is answering their questions on the right answer folder.